golly gosh, I'm always a bit alarmed when I hear the words "very long time." And then, crikey, I have been doing this for a very long time, and we're going to tiptoe back into little bits of history in a moment. Curious enough, that's my boat just whizzing around on the screensaver up there at the moment, which is 104 years old, and it's a funny old thing actually. We've learnt a lot about sailing it. It's a very traditional. It's a racing oyster smack, and above the decks, it's very traditional brown rope and heavy-duty sailcloth. Below the decks, it's like NASA. It's massive, bristling with wireless technology, and so it sort of turns out that the wise old craft of sailing that we've learnt from the people who had these boats before us, and the new tech, down below deck in the holds, it's a pretty heady mix, and we're really enjoying just learning really again how to sail. It's exciting times. Let me focus a bit on. That was just my screensaver, so let me focus a little bit on learning for a moment. I'm just going to take you back in time to your own childhoods for a minute. Do you remember this excellent illusion? The challenge here was: is A longer or B longer, or are they both the same? In fact, let's bit of audience participation here. Who thinks A is the longer, and who thinks B is longer, and who thinks they're both the same? I like to see consensus, even when it's wrong, because if you look at the screen, you'll see A's miles longer. Of course, what I want you to do today really is to just look again at all the things you thought you had certainty about. Go back to what you thought education and learning was like, and say, well, hang on a minute, maybe it's not quite like that. It's an exhilarating time. If you stand on the roof of your schools, if you look as far as you can, you won't see another group of graduate level, smart, postgraduate people focused on something as complex as learning. You know how complex learning is. Massively complicated. A windy day, the old Fremantle doctor comes blowing down the valley. It's a different day to when it's not windy. Not that it's often not windy here. When it's wet, it's different. When it's if a child dies, the school's a different place. It's enormously complex. 250, 500 variables in learning. Where else in the community have you got that powerhouse of intellectual engagement focused on anything as complicated as learning? Is it the banks? No. Is it retail? No. Is it anywhere? No. You're what's left. And I think that carries a duty that we need to open our eyes and genuinely look at what we think we see and not make old. Let's take a trivial example, really. But I've been in a lot of schools. We've got lots of projects in schools, and many of them have this bizarre idea that you could ring a bell and have 1,000 teenagers be simultaneously hungry. It's quite hard to say without laughing, isn't it? Really, it's like, how could that possibly be the case? How could they all be hungry at exactly the same time? So, a good question is, well, is that good for learning then? Is that, well, when you look at it, half of them have had hunger gnawing away all morning, and they're thinking, I just wish I could get my hands on a pie, And the other half are thinking, actually, I've had a pie for break. I really don't want to stop for lunch because I've had enough, But no, you're all going to eat at the same time. If in London, if I try to book a venue that can feed 1,000 people simultaneously, I'm looking at the poshest hotels in London, the Grosvenor, the Savoy, and any secondary school. So we've massively invested in the physical ability to feed children simultaneously in a way that nobody else on the planet's done, as far as I can see. So maybe we need to rethink some of those issues. Look, what am I doing lately? Actually, I'm having the time of my life, to be honest. We've seen a bit about the boat. I'm working in schools all over the world. This is a little school. The school on the screen here on the laptop is a school I'm chairman of governors of, and it opened with 4 children. There's been a huge growth now. I think we've got 8. Which is where are they all going to sit? And the one in the foreground is I'm rebuilding the education system in the Cayman Islands, which is it's tough work. Somebody has to do it. You get rum. It's brilliant. Rum, dominoes, and pirates. That's Heppell heaven. That's the entire population of a school on Little Cayman, all 4 children. And I've had a lot of fun joining the 2 tiny schools up. The teacher in the foreground there is actually the teacher from Surrey in England, and the Caribbean teacher's in Surrey when we took this photograph. But the big boy there, Arrow, the big tall 10-year-old there, when I first came into the school, he was sitting in a room on his own every day, and I said, well, has he been naughty? What's going on here? They said, well, we've only got one 10-year-old, So he's sitting with the 10-year-olds, but there's only the one, And I thought, well, that's pretty daft, but I'm not sure it's any less daft putting 25 10-year-olds in a room. I mean, your tables you haven't got tables by age, have you? You haven't got 21-year-olds here and the 74-year-old. No, it doesn't work like that. It's not. Yeah, it might feel like that, but trust me, it's not. So it's really, it's exciting, I think, to see different models of learning emerging that are pretty effective. The ability to join up, that sense of elsewhere, that softer, lower walls to the classroom that characterise most of what's happening in the 3rd millennium with learning, is when I said to the kids here, what would you like to see in England that's special? There's traffic jams they wanted. They really wanted to see traffic jams. They thought they'd be brilliant. The thought of seeing, cars on a road, stationary, the same people in the same cars every morning, getting out at the same time, driving down the same road, getting stuck at the same point. They honestly think it's the best comedy in town. I'm having a lot of fun with media at the moment. This is the walk into my office in the morning. I have a PhD student, Andrew Ireland, is a pal. His PhD is at TARDIS on the left. He's busy reshooting episodes of Doctor Who from the 1960s with CGI and a bit of computer geek, And he's reshooting current episodes of Doctor Who in a 1960s studio, which is tiny, with old analogue equipment. And slightly alarmingly, actually, having watched both, I think the 1960s version is better than the CGI version. There's something quite nice about real people interacting with each other it's like watching theatre. It's cute, but it's a lot of fun. We had you'll know this movie, I'm sure. How many of you have seen this movie? Don't need me to tell you. It's not the Smurfs. I'll just tell you that. Hands up if you've seen it. Oh, flip, there we are. Highest grossing movie of this century. And we had 52 students working on that. So it's very interesting to have a time when suddenly the kids coming out of education are so valuable because they can do special stuff. We've just had the current Sherlock Holmes movie has moved on to campus because you'll have seen the first recent Sherlock Holmes with the Robert Downey Jr. thing. They've moved it onto campus because they can make it better and faster on a college campus, on a university campus, than they could elsewhere. So, golly gosh, education is suddenly the coolest thing on the planet. Well, learning is. And I've been watching your television since I've been here, and it's full of, every time I turn it on, full of learning. People learning to cook, learning to dance, learning to, when the man Thorpe, swam the other day, they didn't say, do you remember when people got out of the water or got out of their Formula One cars, it was the same dumb question, what does it feel like? People were saying to him, what's your training regime? Where are you going? Where do you think? They were analysing his process. So, learning is the coolest thing on the planet. There is not a company, not an organisation in West Australia at all that's not aspiring to be a learning organisation. And that's interesting, isn't it? When you think where we were 30 years ago, when education was expected to learn about entrepreneurialism from companies, and indeed did. Now suddenly, organisations and companies are learning about learning from education. It's a fascinating turnaround. And I think the dialogue that's going to come from that is going to be pretty exciting. But Of course, education won't be tomorrow like it is today. Of course, there will be changes. Look, here's an interesting little shot. I'm a professor in Madrid as well these days, which is actually slightly alarming. There's breakfast, it's kind of interesting. That's squid ink, in case you're wondering. But here's, I know. What can I say, And I'm British. What do I know about food, There is no British restaurant anywhere in the universe, Where should we go? I know, let's eat British tonight. You'd all be dead by lunchtime, wouldn't you? The great British breakfast, jeepers, This is a conference in Madrid in the university. You can see, I think, that it's a global education forum, and you can see there are lots of chaps in suits and policymakers and so on over here. Chaps of both gender, but you can also see that the conference is being led by children. So this is children saying, what is our future going to look like? And as the various keynotes and worthy folk appeared on stage, this group of children passed judgment after each one on, well, I don't believe any of that. They said rather famously after an American chap beamed in, and at the end of the session, these two reflected on the whole day's process. So this is exciting stuff. Around the world, people are saying, golly gosh, if learning is going to be different, we'd better include everybody in this great debate, and I'm having a lot of fun with all that. So let's tiptoe around some of those possibilities. Here's I'm going to start in a slightly granddaddy way. I'm a granddad now, which is just fab. I really quite enjoy being a granddad. It's good. Only just not been a granddad very long, so that it may wear off when we get to college fees. I think. So ask me again. His granddaughter Amelie, just coming up to her second birthday, posing for her swimming club photograph underwater. In an interesting sort of way. So she's swum up to the camera, she's having a little pose and smiled at the camera, swims off. Now I can remember a time when children didn't swim at one. I think you started all this. It was your not quite sure whether you just threw them in the pool, in desperation. It turned out they could swim, or whether there was some science behind it. But it did turn out they could swim. So they were off like little torpedoes, And I remember a time when we thought it wasn't safe for them to do that. We put armbands on them. We stood alongside them. Look, even more interestingly, here she is on her second birthday, being given one of those balance bikes. Now, I know some of you have got balance bikes as well. These are basically bicycles with no pedals. And how old were you when you learnt to cycle? Shout out a few ages. 6, 5, or 10. We've got a 10. 10's cautious, probably 4's precocious, but you're in that sort of range, aren't you? Really, that's well done, the 4's. Still got that scar on your knee. I mean, do you remember that we put stabilizers on the bikes, and you could only cycle as fast as your dad could run, which wasn't, to be honest, wasn't very. Well, it turns out, look, here she is. As those of you who've got kids will already know, here she is. This is her second birthday. She gets a bicycle for her second birthday. It's got no stabilizer. It's got no pedals. She gets on it and she's off down the hill. This is the very first time she got on it. Can't stop, obviously, at this point. Got no brakes either. But pretty exciting stuff. And by the time we get to 3, so this is about as self-indulgent as I'm going to be, in case you thought I've lost the plot. Here we go. I was in a school the other day, actually, but I went to log on to Facebook, talking to a group of teachers, and the school blocked me from getting onto Facebook. We'll come to that later, but why would you do that, And there were some children in the room, and I said, oh, look, I need to get to Facebook. But the teachers, just cover your eyes for a moment. I just need to ask the children how to get onto Facebook through the school network, And the little girl just leapt up and she said, oh, look, there's 2 ways you could do it. I could set up a proxy server, but she said, look, the quick way is I'm just going to go to Google Translate, put Facebook into Google, go from English to English, and you'll be in, That's, sat down again, It's like 13, Thanks, mate, Okay, teachers, eyes open again. Oh, look, when I'm late, I love how ingenious they are with all this. I was in a school a little bit before that, and I'd done this really quite complex little diagram for the students, and I said, right, whip your phones out, take a photograph of it, and they all looked slightly sheepish. I said, what's the problem? They said, we're not allowed phones in school. Oh, flip. I said, but you've all got them though, haven't you? And they said, oh yeah, we've all got them, So they kind of whipped them out of their bra, and so, And I said, crikey, so what happens then when the school spots this, and confiscates your phone? They said, oh, we're all carrying a sacrificial phone. I've got one of my mum's old Nokia here. Look, that's, Oh, miss, you caught me. Oh, look, I got so fond of those rubber keys, They're pretty ingenious. And look, so here she is for her third birthday. Of course, I bought her a bike with pedals, and away she goes, I think, give or take the hotel network, or the centre's network. But she's completely unimpressed by the fact that she's got a bike with pedals as well. It's going to take a moment, isn't it? That's you're all tweeting, aren't you? The whole.
I really want ice cream. Okay, we'll go get you an ice cream.
So she gets on the bike and she's still on the bike, I think. She gets on the bike and she pedals off down the road. And not look at me, Mum, I'm cycling. It's like, I'm cycling. Can I get an ice cream? I'm off and away. Now, I think that's a nice little analogy for where we are with learning. I think we do need to take the stabilisers off the curriculum. I do think we need to stop saying to kids, you've got to wait until you're 8 or 9 or 10, and you've got to do this safely. I think the question for us is how fast, how far, how fab, and that's a really nice starting point. In most of what you did, looking around here, you're not all of an age, but you're within an age band anyway. Most of what you did at 21, kids did at 16, didn't they? Don't they? Just think about snogging for a moment, So they're doing what you did younger. Why wouldn't that include learning? Why would we say to children, can you imagine a piano teacher saying to a kid, you can't do your grade 8 until you're 16? They don't say that. They just say, when you're ready, crack on. Absolutely crack on. Why would everybody have to wait to move? How young might children graduate is an interesting question, which I've been asking children. I've said, the subject that you were passionate about at school, at what stage do you think you could have graduated in it? Never mind the rest. And there's not a child says, I'd have to hold back till I was 18. The youngest I've heard them say has been 9 or 10. Now, I don't believe that. But the sense that once they got their head down, they might have really gone for it is really quite interesting. How silly is it to make them wait till they're 18? Then send them away at enormous expense when they could have already graduated while the state was paying. Why wouldn't kids? So, when we start asking ourselves how good might children be when we take the stabilisers off, we're going to get some quite interesting answers. And trust me, once they start finding that over there students are graduating before 18, you're out of school with a degree and you've got no fees and you're off and away, they're not going to want to hang on themselves, are they? So there's a rapid change sweeping through all this, which is quite exciting. I'm a professor in 3 universities, so I still think universities have got a key role, but it will be a very different role, I think. So let's explore some of this together, and I'm just going to take you back in time for a moment, because I think it's nice to start with a bit of old, and I think I'm going to take you back to this little girl, I think. Because I found this the other day. I was looking after Steve had died. I was looking for this, and I thought of you. I thought, crikey, the first time I came here was in 1988, and came to show the cool things we were doing with computers. That was one of them, still, And this was a little bit of research we do, where we just sat children down with some, the first time they'd really used a computer that didn't have a green screen, And this little girl she's thrown some bits of fruit into a bucket. And she's trying to hypothesize which bits of fruit will sink and which bits won't sink. Her friend thought it might be the ones with stones in. I remember it's quite a good hypothesis. Stones sink, but of course fruit stones float. So that was and what she's doing is she's playing around with the maths of this. She's measuring the circumference of the fruit and dividing it by the weight to try and work out, I guess, in some sort of 8-year-old, 9. I can't remember if she's 8 or 9. Didn't say on the video, I think. But she's trying to think back to density, I guess, in some way. But that's not what's interesting. What's interesting is how totally confident she is with the technology. Just play a little snippet of her and let's hear her.
Well, how would you do that with this then?
I was younger then, by the way.
You go over here and click on it.
Right.
Then you tell the computer it's a sum.
So it knows there's a sum coming,
Yes.
does it? Right.
And then you go over to 50 and click on it. And then you press this button here.
And what's that button?
That's the share by button.
Shared by,
so
I
I
see.
can share it up.
Right.
Then you go over to 18.
Right.
Click on 18. And then you ask the computer what the answer is.
I see. So you've shared the weight by the number of centimetres,
Yes.
and the answer's 3.
Yes.
What are you going to do with that now then?
I'm going to click on the black. And then I'm going to pull down. And then I'm going to go up to edit.
Well, look, that's enough. I mean, it's staggeringly confident and capable. And because that was an era when, I mean, Paul will remember because we were around together back in those early hypercard days. That was an era when people were giving kids cut-down versions of things, saying, you that's multiplan. It grew up to become Excel, or grew down to become Excel, depending on your view. It's a good product. But she would be 35, I think, at this point, if I've done the maths right. Who's under 35 in the room? So it's kind of interesting, isn't it, that she's older now than many of you. Now, did the curriculum seize on that capability? That I'm not convinced by all those hands that went up. By the way, some people being optimistic, I think. I didn't say who would like to be 35. Pay attention. Wishes they were 35. And it doesn't matter because you're all going to live to 180 anyway, remember, so this is, none of you are beginning to be, you won't be middle-aged till you're 94, so that's I don't think the curriculum leapt forward enough to build on that capability, and I don't think it mattered too much because we were in a world where standardization was okay, where everybody doing the same thing was because if you were working in the Holden plant in Adelaide, up the coast, you were putting the hubcaps on the left-hand side of the car, somebody else was putting them on the right-hand side, and you didn't need a lot of ingenuity and so on for that. Today, you need a whole different skill set, and enough people have rehearsed this in enough conferences for me not to dwell on it, but it is worth just picking up a couple of things, I think, and one of them I think is this. This was IBM's survey of what they wanted CEOs to. This is I think 1,500 CEOs. They said, "What are you looking for in your employees?" And they were looking. You can read the blue words. You don't need me to read them out to you. Can you see them from the middle? Is that okay? I mean, comfortable with ambiguity, disruptive innovators, altering the status quo. These were the children we were expelling in the 1970s and 1980s. Parents would be called in. I'm afraid he doesn't accept the status quo. He's been trying to change the whole enterprise. He seems to be comfortable with ambiguity. He won't wear his uniform and so on. There's something about a uniform charge. It was the very last century, isn't there, really? Well, it's a very different world. And if you just look at, in all honesty, if you just look at the news headlines around you, they are full of the unexpected, an unexpected economic collapse, for goodness sake. An economic Qantas, well, actually, I was going to say an unexpected Qantas strike, but if you'd seen the track record of the chap who's running the place, you perhaps would have expected it. But anyway, that's another debate, But you certainly weren't expecting volcanic ash cloud. You certainly weren't expecting, New Zealand wasn't expecting a boat to go aground in the Bay of Plenty. I mean, your lives will be characterized daily with surprise, absolute surprise. And the reason for that is that the economic models we've built, the technology we've developed, the HR predictions we've got, all let us cut the margins a little bit finer. So when things go wrong, whether they go wrong with a leaking oil well or a human rights argument, or it doesn't matter. When they go wrong, they go spectacularly wrong. And the consequences are unexpected. The consequences are oil pollution, Egypt, grounded passengers, whatever. Now, if children are going to be ready for that world, the very last thing they might be doing at this moment today really would be sitting down to a test and saying to themselves, "Jeeps, I hope there's no surprises on the exam paper." With the teachers outside in the corridor saying, "I hope I've prepared them for everything," because surely the world we're in, we need to surprise them. That's not to say that we don't need to celebrate and assess children's performance. It's not to say that what they do doesn't need to be harder, but the way we measure it and our expectations of what they do has got to be based on the unexpected. Here's a really nice comparison. My wife, fairly predictably, is as old as I am. She seems to have survived it better, but she's as old as I am. And when she graduated, when she was an undergraduate, her entire faculty got the day off because a student had produced the most unexpected exam paper. And they were, you can imagine when you get back to the office, imagine somebody running around saying, "Look at this paper, we never expected this, look what this student's done," And the professors were so excited, running around the building, and gave the whole faculty the day off because the whole paper was so, wow, Now today, to get an undergraduate first-class honours degree, you have to produce the most anticipated exam paper. Somebody's got a checklist, they know exactly what you're supposed to produce. And if you produce an exam paper that was so completely unexpected, it wasn't even on the mark sheet, you would fail. So in a 40, 50, in a few years, we've gone from valuing ingenuity, originality, and freshness of thought to valuing conformity and uniformity and predictability. And that would be disastrous anyway, but it's all the more disastrous because the world's gone from being predictable and conforming to being unexpected, and doesn't mean that we can't measure those things. It doesn't mean that, tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow, the children sitting down at this moment of time next year and the year after, and it's important that they do. It doesn't mean that we can't measure that, but we sure as heck are going to have to measure it in new sorts of ways. When you go to get a job, the very first thing they ask you when you come through the door is, what are you like as a team player? And you think back over your school career, you think of all the exam certificates you got with your name on. I've never seen an exam certificate with a team of kids' names on. You think about the double-mounted work you had on the wall at primary school. It's very rarely signed by 3 children. That world that you've been in as a student has been a world of me. And the world of parenting, the world of citizenship, the world of employment, the world of this millennium is a world of we. There's a really interesting mismatch between the two. Me, we, see is a really nice way to think about the world. And in education, we've done a very good job with the me. That sense of my results, my progress is pretty palpable. But we haven't done a very good job with the we. And it turns out employers are asking for the we need the we, and we haven't done a very good job with the see. As I walk round and look at the outside of schools, don't often see them celebrating to the community what's gone on inside. Do an exercise with head teachers, get them to walk around the perimeter of their school, print it out on Google Earth, walk around the outside with a pen in your hand, put a cross everywhere where your school shares with the local community how good your kids are, put a mark. And because there's never a mark. Sometimes they've got a school radio though, sometimes they've got a cool website, but all too often the website is a sort of glossy brochure for the school. There's not enough authentic children's work in there. So, if education is going to make it in the world of learning that we're going into, it's got to do me, we, and see. At the moment, a lot of it is about me. And I bet you when your kids are sitting down in 5 years' time for today's tests and they're all feeling nervous, the big changes will include sometimes they'll be doing the work together, and sometimes they'll be excited by not knowing what lies ahead when they turn the paper over. And their hearts will be fluttering with excitement rather than with worry. Let's look at what that looks like in terms of spaces. Because around the world, people have taken that brief and said, blimey, okay, let's look again at what our learning spaces might look like. And I'm going to scamp a few of these, and we'll look at some case studies. So here's, I couldn't help but pause at this one, because I just love the irony. In fact, it was a brand new school with a CO2 was the door number, but there's an air conditioning unit rammed in the doorway, trying to, so it's just a nice irony, really, of the poor ventilation of the CO2. Look, this is a school in the Caribbean. Anybody comes past in a boat, they just drag them ashore and say, would you mind teaching our kids for a week or so? And off they go again. This is girls' high school in Dubai with the lights in the roof. They wanted to make the school as glamorous and exciting as they could. This is a shopping mall in Alaska. In England, where 1 in 7 shops are shut at the moment. More shutting, probably since while I've been away, a lot more will have disappeared. This is a shopping mall in Alaska, has been converted into a shop and a university and a college. Just took over the place. The only thing they left were the food halls, which worked really well. Oh, this is delightful. This is a little... do you remember years ago when... we remember. We go back to the time when people were driving around in computer buses to say, oh, look, here's the new world coming in a bus parked outside your thing full of computers. This is an art bus in Denmark, and it goes to houses, and it helps parents to get back to understanding how they can do artwork with their children. They can do iPads and Nintendo Wiis and so on pretty well, but they've forgotten how to do potato prints and powder paints and so on. It's right, parks there for a week. Here's this one's cute. This is a school in Blackpool in England, where they have the fastest computers, the fastest network, the fastest printers. They do fast food, and as a kid you could only stay in there for 20 minutes and then you're off. You get a little ticket and you're gone. Time is one of those interesting things that surely we should have been a little bit more thoughtful about in learning. And what's the longest teaching block any of you are involved in or have been in even as a student? What's the longest teaching block you've been in? Let's do this a bit like an auction. Who's done longer than half an hour? Surely many. Okay, so just shout out if you're more than, and let's see how high we can go. Just shout. I don't need to raise it. 2 hours. That's surely better than 2 hours. We got 3 hours. More than 3 hours? Oh, this is a rubbish auction. Is that? Oh, flip. Look, in Norway, heaps of kids do a subject a day. There's something quite wonderful about immersion. Something about doing maths for a whole day, where you really get into it. And I'll tell you, when you say to your subject teachers, would you like the kids for a whole day? They say, oh, that's great. Of course, you can't do what I like to characterise as Dick Turpin teaching. You can't do stand and deliver teaching for a whole day, or you'd top yourself before the kids did, Well, they'd probably top you first. They're a bit more proactive these days, But there's something about, you do maths, you go through break, you go through lunchtime, you don't want to leave because you're so into it. You've probably seen the research evidence is pretty clear. Kids doing the same thing for a day get way further and faster than kids doing the same thing split up into 8 pieces or 6 pieces or 3 pieces. So immersion really works. The black belt end of immersion I came across in Liso's school in Dudley in England, where they do a subject a month. And it's all they do. So for the summer term, before they get to the 14-16 curriculum, they have 2 1-month blocks where they do a whole subject. If it's June, you're doing biology, mate. Good luck, And of course they mix what they do, because they haven't got thousands of biology teachers. So you pick your 2 subjects. You do it for a month. You do nothing else for a month. You do all the coursework. You do the exam. You walk away. You never do the subject again. Really interesting. Now, would you hypothesize that school's doing it because the exam results have got worse? I don't think so. The reason they've done it is because there's something, and of course schools know how good immersion can be. You've seen children with your music productions. You've seen children with sport. You've seen children when they've occasionally had those intensive, days out with a local university or with a museum or gallery. You've seen what intensive immersion does to children's engagement. And engagement is the key word here. If the children are engaged, you have the world and the future at your fingertips. If they're not engaged, it doesn't matter what you do to the furniture and the architecture and the curriculum. And, it doesn't matter how good, how exciting, how dull the tests are. It doesn't make a heap of a difference. Engagement is the key. When they are engaged, the tests they're doing today, which I know you've got to go off to, they are doing that. The tests that they're doing today, they just breeze past. And people stop focusing on them as kids who are engaged are stellar. Just like the kids with the swimming underwater, just like the kids with the balance bikes. We do not know how good our kids can be. And we often look at the measures as being, we'll never find out how good they are because the universities want this, or we'll never find out how good they are because the exams. I'll catch you later. Look forward to dinner. Catch you later. We just don't know how good they are. But I can honestly say 35 years of projects, huge amount of work, tens of millions of pounds of research. The one thing that emerges with certainty is the kids can be flipping good compared to how we let them be at the moment. Haven't had a project fail in all that time. And that's not because I'm brilliantly prescient or wonderfully, everything Heppell touches turns to gold. Of course not. The projects succeed because the baseline is so low. Everything succeeds if the children are engaged. And what we suddenly learn from this, looking around the world, is that people are chasing engagement. Let's look on at some of their spaces. Here's, this one's a lovely one. This was a school I was involved with this. The local community had a real down on the kids. They didn't know how good the kids were, let alone how good they might be. So we took over the hoardings in the town. We parachuted an artist in residence into the town, into the schools, and advertised the children all over the town. We took over the advertising hoarding. So as you drove around the town, there were adverts for the kids all over the place for a month. Lovely project. And here are the kids advertising their rhythm and blues club. Slightly sadly, the children never chose to advertise their curriculum work. They said, look, here's our sports club, here's our photography club, here's our computer coding, here's our rocket club. They never said, hey, historians, look how good we are. It was it's curious because those subjects can be compelling as well, but they clearly didn't feel the burn of excitement in those subjects in the way that they did in their extracurricular spaces. So we learn from that, don't we? Here's these are cute. This is if you've got one of those nice big agile spaces, you need agility in schools. You really, really need agility in schools and in universities. We'll come to university learning space in a moment. But, if you just need a bit of privacy occasionally, you blow one up. I don't, obviously mean in the, in the sort of Al-Qaeda sense, you inflate a space. And there you've got that lovely piece of privacy. And then if it's a bit stressful in your learning institution, here's a chill-out space in a school in the Netherlands where staff and children go just when it's a bit stressful. And the room is decked out by the drama department, and they just pop in and take a deep breath. There are rules and no noise. So you can't talk on your phone, you can't talk. You can listen to stuff, but with your earphones. And you just take a moment to chill out and you go back in. If you were a structural engineer, by the way, that's the chill-out space. So slightly alarming when you look at where it is, sort of swinging up there on wires above the school floor. Here's we'll come to that later. This is a library, and it's also the reception. This is a school in Alaska, as it happens, but mostly when I walk into schools, it's a bit like visiting prison. The way that you register is very similar. There's a door, you come through a door, you sign in, you get a badge, the next door doesn't open until you've signed in. I had a PhD student in prison. It was very similar to visiting a secondary school, slightly gentler regime, to be honest, but very similar, Why wouldn't that work? If the last time you were in school as a kid, you'd had a not very satisfactory experience, and the worst thing that would ever happen to you is you'd be left sitting on a chair in the corridor outside the head's office. How compelling that would be as a parent when you come back 20 years later, and the first thing you find yourself doing is sitting on a chair in the corridor outside the head's office again. Holy moly, I'm off. You ran away last time, you're going to run away again. So this is much nicer. This is a school library. I am the world's biggest fan of school libraries. I think they're just fab. But the best school libraries, of course, a third of the stuff in them is children's work. Why wouldn't you index children's work onto the shelves? I don't mean with a sort of a ghettoed, kids section over there in the corner, properly Dewey Decimaled onto the shelves. So, when you're doing that project on glaciated scenery, you can have a look at Fred's project from 3 years back when he went skiing, and he's talking about U-shaped valleys or whatever people talk about in geography. Why wouldn't you stand on the shoulders of the giants that were your peers in the years before? Why do we continue with this myth that you've only got to do as well as the year before, and we won't show you what they did, but we'll tell you afterwards? Why wouldn't we give them what they did the year before and say, if you can't beat... Imagine what the Olympics would be like if it was criterion referenced. Cheapers, you'd all get gold medals, wouldn't you? You've only got to do as well as they did in the 1930s. How hard would that be? I've seen the sailors. I could beat them. But it's not. Each year you're expected to outperform and outperform and outperform, and that model of ipsative referencing, of personally feeling your own progress, thinking how good you could be, I don't know a kid on the planet who's motivated by criterion referencing. Don't know a parent who can understand. You get a report comes home, well done, your son is 16th in a group of 32. Well, what's the group? What does 16th mean? What are they doing? I don't know. But your kid comes home and says, hey, let me tell you what I've been doing. How cool's this? You see, just look in their eyes, how well they're doing, straight off. And this is a lovely model where you come into the school through the library. By the way, the receptionist is the librarian. So you come in, and if you're a bit early, you sit down, you look at the sort of books that they're looking at, you look at students' work. It's a nice, gentle place. A library is something you're comfortable with, and you come. Here's another delightful way of making learning seductive and engaging. That might not work in Western Australia, but this is in Denmark. I'm rebuilding, helping the people of Silkeborg in Denmark rebuild their education system, and this is a little primary school with a bread oven in the heart of it. When you come in the morning, there is always fresh bread cooking, and you open the door and the smell of fresh bread is pervasive, just gorgeous. And when it's a special day, they put pizza in the oven. So you come in as a kid and you think, I don't know what's going to happen today, but it's going to be good because there's pizza, Brilliant. It'd be a bit hot round here, but they come in and just lean up against the oven, and just get nice and warm and so. But what a sense of mutuality and community and membership and belonging you get from that. Your supermarkets pump the smell of fresh bread artificially around them to make you feel better, happier. Why haven't we tried any of that? Where's the research on olfactory educational stimulation? Why haven't we pumped fresh bread around the schools? Is it pumped fresh coffee around the staff room? Maybe. But this is a library in Thailand. This is TK Park. Just delightful place. And what's exciting about TK Park are two things. One is it was built for families. This is a family learning centre. It's where you go with your grandparents and your parents. And remember that those are very different things these days. I was in the school month or so back, 2.5 months back, where they were having a parents' science day. And the school, rather imaginatively, had said to the kids, sent a letter home saying, bring all your dads. Which is quite an interesting phrase, isn't it? It's quite, because... kids have got a lot of dads, that's the truth of it. But so often, we send those letters home, we're still in a world of there's a mum and a dad, and bring your parents to school, and we've got, the children. I don't even know who to ask. Who am I going to ask? Do I want to upset my dad and my stepdad? And actually, we've got an uncle at the moment. Do I ask him? It's really quite complex. So bring all your dads is a great phrase. We're not going to do this without parents at all. I'll come to parents in a moment. But for that, it's kind of wake up and smell the coffee time. Let's look at what's happened to the whole community of support that's around the children. And it's not the community of support that characterised the last 50 years of the last century. I think when we look back on this, 1950 to 2000 will be the moment of complete aberration. History will say, flip, we lost the plot a bit there. Those factory schools delivering a curriculum, children sitting in rows facing the same way, teachers locked in a room with 30 children for a lifetime, which is a strange thing to happen to anybody. It just isn't going to feel right. And we're going back to the world where, a whole community worked with kids. Let me come to that in a moment. See a couple more images for a moment. This was this was lovely. This was in Adelaide just last week. Children make privacy wherever they like. And here, the privacy is we're lying on the floor, we're doing something together in a computer screen. We've used the table to screen ourselves from the rest of the world. These kids are away and off. Notice they're not using the furniture. Have a look at those chairs. Look at the chairs that you're sitting on. Are they chairs designed for reading? I don't think so. I've stayed in a lot of hotels in this last month. And I haven't so far, might all change tomorrow, but I haven't so far met somebody dragging a chair from the dining room down the corridor to get to the beach because they want to read a book. It's not been I want to read a book. I need I can't get into a novel unless my back's properly upright, so I'm going to read on the beach. I'm taking a chair down from the dining room so I can have a proper read. Mum, I'd like to read a book. Can I borrow a kitchen chair from my bedroom? It doesn't, simply doesn't happen. There's not a child on the planet would choose to read on a chair like you're sitting on. And yet, what do we do in schools? We give them those chairs. Why? Because they're stackable. Oh, well, that's much more important than children reading, isn't it? Why do they need to be stackable? Because we've got too much furniture. Why have we got too much furniture? Because we thought we'd have a chair for everybody. It's just, you see the way that this goes wrong. It's like that visual, that optical illusion at the beginning. The more you look at it, the dafter it becomes. Why do kids wear their shoes in the school? Now, you know that I'm nutty about shoeless education. I've just become completely seduced by it. And this afternoon, after lunch, you will be taking your shoes off. I'll warn you now, if you need to pop out and get some decent socks. Now, here's your warning, But kids with their shoes off work spectacularly well. And we might hypothesize for later today about why. I'm not going to say any more about that. But there's something about, how many of you take your shoes off when you get home? Oh, look, jeeps, so that there's something there about membership in belonging in a learning family, rather than, if I'd have said, how many of you take your shoes off in the factory at Holden's, in Adelaide, or whatever, everybody would have left their shoes on. So, factories, shoes, home, community, shoes off, and we could have had the same debate about spirituality, and the Chinese would tell you it's about the sensing the floor through your feet. Actually, I'll be honest, my slightly dodgy hypothesis is that somehow boys store their testosterone in their shoes. I think there's something going on there, that when they take their shoes off, you've seen it with your own kids, when they take their shoes, they just turn nice, don't they? There's something, it's really hard to be a horrible teenage boy without your shoes on. It's just and you know it to be true, and yet you let your kids walk around their shoes all day. It's like, why would you do that? So it's just an interesting time, isn't it, for learning. Here's we're going to look at these classrooms in a minute. I built these. This one's fun. This is a school in the Netherlands, where they are curious. We would be talking about boys because they were worried about boys fidgeting. You'll notice how boys fidget. And they thought, in a rather charmingly Dutch way, they thought, if boys fidget, let's give them chairs where if they don't fidget, they will fall off the chairs. So that's what these are. These chairs are actually dynamically unstable, and you sort of fidget the whole time. Kids love them, never mind boys, they're great. Here's this is Canberra Primary School in Singapore, where, rather imaginatively, this is a primary school of, what's the biggest primary school you've come across? Well, we'd just shout them out again and have another quick auction. Biggest primary school you've ever been in your life is 1,000. Oh, that's pretty big. Anybody bigger than 1,000 for a primary school? That's good, that's big. This is 3,500 Canberra Primary School. It's officially whopping. And and they kids start early and do lunch, or they do lunch and stay late. The staff do the whole day. So you think, just in passing, that itself is quite interesting, because if you've got teenagers, you know that some of them are some of them are up and ready to rock and roll at 6:30. You've seen kids in swimming clubs, they're out of the door, they're fabulous. Other kids are barely able to grunt before 11 o'clock. That's the most, oh, you wake up, For many, that lasts into their 50s. But I mean, politicians, perhaps. But why would we make them all start school at the same time? and in doing so mean that we have to have as many places as we got kids. This is a school for 3,500 children, but there's only room in it for about 1,500 because they're never all there at the same time, and they like not being there at the same time. And look, every large child works with a small child, so everybody has a mentor who's older than them. Something about chasing the role model of an older child that accelerates your learning. There's something about the responsibility of working with a younger child. I was talking to a 14-year-old girl and all through school in Kent, in the Isle of Sheppey in Kent, in England. And she'd got a track record as long as your arm. Her file of naughtiness was fairly extensive. And I'd said to her, why is this working in this school when it didn't before? And she gave me this wry smile. And she said, it's really hard to be naughty when you're looking after an 8-year-old, which is just a great, such a simple phrase, So why would we ghetto all the 15-year-olds together to maximise their naughtiness? I mean, none of this makes a lot of sense, Well, the answer is because we always did it. Look, here's, just before we go and look at some case studies, here's, these are all so lovely, aren't they, Oh, look, this is in Chicago. This is the place where you eat, but also the place where you write on the wall. So, that distinction between social and work. How many of you have done email in bed? This is a good test. Blimey, other way around. How many of you haven't done email in bed? Some cracking relationships going on over here. Well done. Yeah, most of you, your business life has crossed over into your work and social life, and that's how it is. Why would you make artificial distinctions between that? Why wouldn't kids continue to learn 24/7? Why wouldn't every wall where they were be a place where they could stop and write? Why wouldn't every table be the same? This is in Yokohama. This is a net above the primary school that the children who are going to join the primary school next term play in for the term before. They're rather lovely, so you come in, you scamper around the net, and next year, the next term, you'll be down. I'm not quite sure whether that's a hole there, whether you go down, you just drop in, So, it kind of might be a sort of stage, not age thing going on. The curious kids drop in early, Oh, we haven't put the mattress out, damn, Explains a lot about what's happening in the Japanese economy, maybe. But I wanted to give you that sense that people were playing at it. And let's just tiptoe a little further into that with some case studies. We were just chatting, we just had a lovely breakfast with Paul and some of his pals, and we were chatting about this classroom, which is a classroom my daughter Juliet teaches in. She's in a school in West London, and the kids won a competition to design a school of the future, a classroom of the future. And they won it by doing a lot of research. They looked at the research projects, they Skyped into other schools that had done cool stuff. They had a vision of what they wanted their learning space to be like. And crucially, they said, we'd like to build a learning space of today, really. Because, we're talking about 21st century learning today, but actually, if you're 10, you've only lived in the 21st century. The 21st century is your whole life. That's a 10-year-old, so it's probably a little late to be talking about 21st century learning. Maybe we might focus a bit on third millennium. So they said all that. And they won $30,000 Australian to make over their room. And I'm just going to give you a couple of the features, and then maybe hear a snippet from them. So one thing they said is, why wouldn't every surface be a writing surface? Every single one. And it is. The desktops, the walls, you can do this tomorrow. You go straight back to your schools, any white desk, give them a whiteboard pen, let them write on it, and flip, it really works, They said, oh look, there's somebody writing on the wall behind. They said, don't buy any technology, please. Well, that's a surprise, But what they said was, if you buy technology today, in 3 years' time, you'll have spent all the money on the technology, we'll be in a crap classroom with out-of-date computers. So if you let us use whatever we own in the space, in 3 years' time, it will still be up to date, because trust us, 3 years' time, we're not still going to be using those sacrificial phones we've been handed in. 3 years' time, we'll be up to date. So give us a cool space and leave it to us to keep it wired, Now, cue an interesting debate about equity and ownership, but we just did some interesting survey work in England looking at children's ownership of mobile phones. And when you analyse formally the ownership of mobile phones. How many have got a smartphone and an internet connection they can regularly use? The figures come out in the 80s usually. But when the kids do the survey, the figures often come out at 100%. So why is there a difference? And the answer is, not all the children got their phone legally. Not all the children are using their own Wi-Fi. Lots of kids are piggybacking off the Wi-Fi of their neighbours. They've made a bit of a guess. They've said, well, we know the neighbours, and they've probably got a Netgear router, so I'll pop into the YouTube video of how to hack your neighbour's Netgear router, and I bet they'll have left the password at default, admin, here we go, oh, we're in, I'll type in the MAC number for my computer, they won't even know I'm on there, So a lot more kids were connected and had ownership than we thought when we got the children to survey it, which is kind of interesting. So they said, we'll just use our stuff. They said, when we want to read, give us comfy furniture that looks like that. They did. They said, give us mood lighting, because can you imagine when you're a 16-year-old? Well, think back to when you were 15, how long it was going to be before you were 16. That was a heck of a long time. Can you imagine when you're 15, if every single day you come to school, every Monday is the same? The same timetable, the same lesson, sit in the same chair, look in the same direction, the same wall, the same O'Donnell, the same everything. Can you imagine how boring that must be? So why wouldn't we mix it up a bit? Why wouldn't you have, some Mondays it's a one-day immersion lesson. Other Mondays, we're doing little 20-minute sprints in the fast lab. And why wouldn't you better just change the mood of your room by changing the coloured lighting? And why wouldn't you, you can do it yourself. Why wouldn't you sometimes sit on a high chair, sometimes stand? This was the room they made overlook, the most unprepossessing space, Lambton School in West London, in Hounslow. Outstanding school, outstanding results, fabulous kids in a really tough area. Look at the furniture, look at the diversity of sitting there. Look at the colours and the mood lighting. Look at the fact that they use Facebook and Google Docs and all the things that are part of their lives. Look at the different perching seats. Look at the Skype bar at the back of the class. So habitually, when they want to talk to another school, they just do. And look, you know how powerful that is. If I jump down to, if I go off to Skype, if I go to education.skype.com. Look, currently there are 18,725 teachers waiting to Skype to you from their classroom at the moment. Where are they? Well, that's the last 250 were there. They're scattered all over the world. So, why wouldn't the kids want a Skype bar so they can chat to their mates? And so, now what was interesting about this space, really interesting, were two things. One was, I was like many of you are on Twitter, and I came across this rather nice little comment on Twitter from Lambton citizens, that's the address the kids use for themselves in the class, and they're saying, ooh, this is my first tweet, I'm learning how to use Twitter. And I'd sent them something I realise now deeply patronising. I said, well done you, and they sent me back and they said, don't be stupid, we're helping the teachers to learn to use Twitter, that's it. They can't use Twitter, they can't use their classroom, so we're having to train them up, Of course, and then I thought I'd better interview them about their hopes and dreams for university life, because these kids are 15, and I thought, well, they've built their own classroom. And by the way, let me tell you, August this year, I was standing on a stage in Michigan in front of 700 teachers, and the kids' results came through as I was speaking. And I'd said, we had a live link, and I'd said, they're going to be pretty good. Because, I know, as you know, the secret weapon is engagement, and they're going to be better. But they were so much better, I cried. I had tears, properly tears in my eyes, right, old softy, I just did not expect to see kids, predicted for 2Ds walking out with 2As. This is in 18 months. When we get it right, the kids aren't just stellar, they're stellar quick. It is literally like throwing a match in a box of fireworks. Finally, the whole lot goes up. And it's a heck of a display, So I said to the kids, well, this is what I'd said. And this is a video I've made to give to university vice-chancellors in England, who I think, need to be frightened occasionally. It's good for them. Actually, then you'd be frightened quite a lot, to be honest, daily. Oh, sorry, let me actually turn the video on. This is out of the Centre for Excellence in Media Practice in Bournemouth, where my research team are. I'm just one of the team. We're going to talk a little bit about university life, but tell me a little bit about this space first of all. What's special? Yeah, what's special about this place?
Classroom was designed by students, so it was designed by the people who are going to use it now and for future generations, and it incorporates a lot of the things that we use at home and technology we use at home and technology we're familiar with, and I think that helps, and I think that's what makes this classroom really unique.
It's quite good for group work, so if we just want to move to our own space in the classroom and we need something to write and we don't have to search for paper and pen, and we can just get one of the board pens and write things down.
And I love the coloured light around does the coloured light change during the day? How does that?
Yeah, they're mood lights, so they can change themselves, or we can change the settings.
So you can set different mood colours. Oh, very good. Do you think you'll get spaces like this in university?
But I think universities would have probably thought more about that because they're more experienced with students. Maybe they're bigger and there's more students, so they have more opinions.
I know that when I go to university, there's going to be a range of different types of learning styles, and I'll be able to choose the styles that I like to learn in, and it'll be more independent. It'll be much different from traditional secondary school. And do you think? Oh, blimey. Are you going to tell her, or am I? So good news, if you go to study learning, you go to get an education degree, you'll get to do seminars and lectures and essays and golly gosh. Now, I don't think this generation are going to tolerate that. I think they have the ability to communicate with each other, and that magnifies their intolerance in a pretty spectacular way. We're in a world where there are no secrets. Look, this is a road sign near where I live. It's a wonderful world of transparency. And the minute they go to somewhere and they find, look, I'm doing a teaching degree here, and they seem to be teaching for the 1970s. They're going to get pretty upset. Look, I spent some time with JISC, one of our university research teams nationally, looking at. I wonder what the equivalent is of a 1,500-word essay, because it's easy to say this stuff, but so what do we do about it is much more complicated. Making great third millennium learning happen is not hard, but it sure as heck is complex, and sharing that complexity is really important. So it's easy to say you shouldn't just do essays, but what's the equivalent of an essay becomes quite problematic. Is it a 30-second video, and how many edits would it need to have? Is it managing an online community for a week, and how many contributions would you expect? Do you see what I mean? It's a really complex thing, and I don't think it's not fair to expect a course committee in a university or an exam board at school level to make those judgments. But we do need teams that can make those tariffs authentic. And those tariffs are going to change because, crikey, do you remember, Paul, when we were making digital video all those years ago, it was flipping hard. It was really difficult to do. I remember being locked up with a whole bunch of Hollywood movie stars, to make movies with children. Nice ring, by the way. It's good. I like that. I like a bit of retro myself. Being locked up with, a whole bunch of movie stars to see what it would be like to make a movie on a computer. Well, now I'll get my phone out. I can shoot an iMovie, view. I can do the edits on the phone when I'm on the bus on the way home. So the tariffs are going to have to change, aren't they? If 1,500 words was there and making a 30-second video was there, well, now maybe it's something much more common. Maybe it's making a video with embedded augmented reality in it with QR codes, or so somebody has to do that work. The thing is, it has to keep changing. And if the look, here's let's go to this for a moment. So it's a bit of a jump, but it's worth it, I think. The way that we make learning happen, the way that we make it seductive and engaging, has to change to stay fresh. And if we can't do that, with validity, with quality, then we're scuppered. There's no good saying we'd ditch the old exam system, let's have a new one, because the new one will be ossified and then it'll be out of date in 6 months' time. And so, we've got to build that model of moving forward, but it's got to be built on a model of trust. Learning's got to be tough. It's got to be ambitious. A scholarship's got to make your brain hurt, Otherwise, we're nowhere. Look, I got invited to redesign the curriculum for air traffic controllers. So this is slightly... any of you travelling on a plane in the next month? Is that... Oh, flip, look, you probably ought to leave the room, really, at this point. So air traffic controllers, their model of learning is not a very good one. And the consequence is they don't learn very well, And they just fail rates about 50%. It's very high. And the ones who pass can't remember. So I've had the joy of listening to the crisis tapes, from the air traffic control rooms as people are literally trying to remember and unable to do so. So the task of improving air traffic controllers' learning was very close to my heart. You can imagine, because I thought, and we did a whole heap of stuff, but it's been really interesting work. This is research. I wasn't going to show you this, but it's research I'm in the middle of at the moment, but it's fascinating. So the first thing we did, of course, was to make learning more playful. Because we know how powerful play is. Talk to any early years teacher and they'll tell you how engaging play is. But play isn't just engaging. Play presents you with the unexpected. Play surprises you. Even when you're playing hide and seek with a 2-year-old, it's the moment of being found is a moment of delight and laughter, and it's unexpected. Oh, I wasn't expecting to find you hiding there behind your hands. Gosh, never have thought of that, It's lovely, and play really, really matters. So play surprises. And all the research that's come out of children's, game-based learning and beyond, which we were chatting about over dinner last night, it all basically says the same thing. Kids playing games get surprised, get challenged. They're locked then into a cycle of observe, question, hypothesize, test, which is entirely appropriate to bring to their science class, is entirely appropriate to bring to their critical awareness of media on the internet, entirely appropriate in 1,000 different ways. So I thought, let's just make air traffic controllers learning more playful. And we ripped the doors off their seminar rooms, we put the doors on from old aircraft, I turned the seminar room into a plane fuselage. They sit in there, having chat. They eat their lunch in here off plastic trays, all laughing. And it's brilliant, It's, because they weren't expecting it to be like that. I turned the aircraft recognition into a set of, you have those little cards that people, teenage boys play them, and they my Lamborghini is faster than your Lamborghini, and kids have Harry Potter ones, my Dumbledore beats your whatever, I turned it into a pack of cards for aircraft recognition. They could not learn the aircraft. The many, many, many different sorts of, when you get in a plane, you get out the safety thing, the string of numbers tells you what the plane is. It doesn't say Mosquito anymore. It doesn't have a sort of a name. It's just, you don't know the difference either, nor do they, slightly scarily. Well, in 2 nights, with quite a lot of beer and some money, and a pack of cards, they learnt a lot. Something powerful about play. So what we also did, of course, was to approach this by saying, okay, what do we know about pedagogy already, particularly in early years? And we knew a lot about spaced learning. We know that if you want children to remember things intensively in revision, they learn and learn and learn. You stop, you do something mindless for 5 or 10 minutes, like throwing a ball in a fixed pattern, and then you stop, you go back to your learning, and there's something in that space that lets your brain do the housework on your neural pathways. It's a little sort of taxonomizing job. It Dewey Decimals your brain, and then you get on again, and that stuff remains. It resides. It sticks. So I took all the science of learning that we know and fed it into the air traffic controllers, and you won't be surprised to hear that it worked spectacularly well. So I just come back again to what I was saying earlier on, that what we know about how to make great learning work is suddenly enormously valuable. If your economy, as it booms through the mine years, as it booms, if those companies can't keep ahead of the rest of the world, if they can't be ingenious in their approaches, then your boom will slump, as you've seen in a million other places. If you can keep ingenuity running at the front, if everybody everybody in this state, is burning with the value of ingenuity rather than the value of conformity. Your future is absolutely assured. I mean, look at what Kenneth Chen's been saying lately. I can't find it, but Kenneth Chen, who's the Minister of Education in Hong Kong, has been saying lately, we only get to be top nation in science by doing it differently. And he's been saying, we're only going to learn more if we teach less. So, the places in the world that you're competing with are competing with you with their learning. And, we're not going to do any of this without getting the parents on board. Here's a lovely workshop being run by a school, by children, for parents. And those are people bringing all their dads along and swapping and exchanging what they know about. Every parent in Perth would want to read to their children at night. What do they know about it? Do we say, what do you do? What's the right way to read to a child? Do you sound out the words that you know and say, you know that one, or do we point to the ones they don't know and see if they can, have we spent much time with parents on synthetic phonics? Do you get to the end of the page and try and imagine, what do you think is going to happen next? Will the caterpillar eat another leaf? What do you think? Is that? Oh, he has. Yeah, it's not the most compelling book, to be honest. Maybe a bird eating the caterpillar would have perked it up a bit. But what do you do? Every parent in Perth, every single parent does it, and how much support have we given them? And then the maths. A sort of 11-year-old girl comes home from school, sits down with her mum. She's doing her homework. She says, Mum, I'm stuck. Mum says, has a look, says, long division, I used to be quite good at that. I was, let me show you. A couple of squiggles in, the girl says, Mum, we don't do it like that anymore, And Mum says, well, how do you do it? The kid says, look, Mum, if I knew that, I wouldn't be stuck, would I? We are where we are, So two people, keen, willing and able, and neither of them can move forward because we've left the vacuum. Now we're not going to do it. Do you know about these flipped schools that people are saying actually sitting in school the whole day copying? Look, here's the Campaign for Learning's survey where they asked children. They said to children in England these questions: what are the most common teaching methods used in your? Well, you can read it. I hate being read to from a screen. And do you know what the kids said? The most common method was, they said this, they said 52% of them said we spend most of our time copying from a book or a board. Isn't that dotty? And then they go home with the difficult problems to do for homework. Why don't they do the copying if that's what you're still doing? Why don't they do the chore? Why don't they do the grunt work of their learning at home where they don't need support? And when they do the tricky bit, why don't they do it in school where the teachers are? It just makes more sense, doesn't it? We've done the whole thing backwards, My view would be we should arm the parents. So I've got really quite nutty about the whole arming the parents thing, and I've decided I've decided to do this. So I've set up a mumology degree, and you go to mumology.net, you'll find it. And I'm saying to parents, and this all came about because I was working with very young mothers, and asking them how they supported each other, which they did quite well. They swapped ideas with each other, but one of the ideas they had was that if you want an easy birth, you should smoke through pregnancy, which is an interesting, it's true, get a small baby, but of course a damaged baby, you can see where they're coming from, So I got a group of children there who were keen to help each other with the task of being parents, but again, we'd failed to fill the vacuum of quality assuring, mediating their knowledge and understanding. So a community of practice, alleluia, young mums working and helping and swapping each other and supporting each other, bring it on. But let's make sure we mediate it and lift the game to be the best there. And it's really interesting because what happens in rural schools traditionally is that if kids succeed, they get their degree and they go to college and never come back. And often then, when they have kids, the families move too, because they go to be grandparents. So one big impact of education in rural areas is to de-skill the whole area, catastrophically so. And then we can't get the teachers for the school. And it spirals into a how cool would it be if instead the act of becoming a parent led you on a pathway to graduation, where your research project is right here in your arms, and you could easily fill a degree in parenting. You think about all that you know about nutrition, about cognitive science, about cultural diversity. Why did they do it that way there and this way here? You could fill 3 degrees. So by the time the children get into primary school, their parents, well, their mums in particular, it's a mumology degree. I didn't register dadology, but I've registered grannyology just in passing. But wouldn't it be interesting if by the time they get to primary school, their mum can work online at a graduate level, collaboratively, around the world, from home? How much is that person worth? So the act of parenting, raises the human capital of the community and generates employment as well. I mean, that's the sort of fresh thinking I think we need if we're going to leap forward in all this. Look, we're coming up to a coffee period, and we've got lots of time to get into questions and debates and things. I just want to leave you really with the contrast of some other images I've seen from around schools, because all have just shown you bits of other people's schools. Of course, I've only shown you history so far, I've only shown you the past, think how good the future is going to be, but the past isn't always too good. So as we go to coffee, let me just leave you with a few images. This was a school in Chicago where they had a special room for the 21st century, which I thought was quite cool. I took the picture last year. I thought, that if the room was for the 21st century, what's the rest of the school for, And famously, because I've said it often before, I went in and the room was empty, so I know they had no vision. Here's another school where children aren't allowed to do anything. This is a notice saying turn your phones off. When my daughter was 11, I took an aggregate of the total processing power of her primary school, wrote it all down. When she was 21, the phone in her pocket outperformed the primary school she'd left a decade before. So every 10 years, the entire school network disappears into the pockets of the children, and in some schools we confiscate it. That's a good idea. So turn your phone off. I love this one. The computer lab is only available for detention. I think it's brilliant. I love the underlining of must be turned off here. It's a brilliant one. We have in England, we have these things called the mosquitoes. We hate children in England by and large. The children must be seen and not heard is a sort of a great. And these mosquitoes make a high-pitched noise. We put them in shopping centres to drive teenagers out. I mean, it's just completely crazy, And it's a very high-pitched noise. Only teenagers can hear it. By the time you get to be 20, you can't hear the noise. So what do the kids do? They rock up with their mobile phones. They whip their phone out. They record the high-pitched sound, and now they've got a ringtone that their teachers can't hear. It's brilliant, So. And thank goodness I'm with them, but must be turned off. Just whoops-a-daisy, really, really must. And just scrolling on down a bit. Here's turn it off. This one's from America. You can have your gun, but please take the ammunition out before you bring it into class. So it's just wonderful, Look, it doesn't take them long to reload. Trust me. I love this one because it's the Learning Resource Centre, but you're not allowed learning resources, I think it's good. And we've done this for a long time in schools, haven't we? Turn it off, turn it off. Look, I think we're at a new point. I think we're here. I think we're absolutely here. I think the kids are just crapping on our rules, really, for want of a better description. So as you go to coffee, just blink, rub your eyes and think, I wonder how good this might all be. And then let's get into a conversation about that during the rest of the day. So enjoy your coffee. I think the view is going to be opened behind us. Is that right? Oh, at lunchtime. Okay. It's a stunning view out there. You really don't want to see it. It's too nice. I'll see you later. Thank you very much.